Great new piece about you in chat. WBUR.org. The stream is up. The politics of Twitch personality Hasan Piker and his dedicated community. Oh, this is the new one. This is a new piece that came out, right? Yeah, March 14th.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S.
Parent origin story video for Tim Houthi.
Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Support for this podcast comes from Is Business Broken? In
love with a celebrity.
People are into this Timothy Chalamet. They say he's a Houthi fighter. He's hot. They say he looks like Chalamet.
Yes. Not incredibly skinny Bob Dylan impersonator Timothy Chalamet. Tim Houthi Chalamet.
The apparent origin story video for Tim Houthi Chalamet was pretty unremarkable on the surface.
Just a guy with curly, dark hair steering a small boat with one hand and holding his phone in selfie mode with the other. A light blue skiff bathed in the sun. Very mindful, very demure. A much bigger ship hulking in the background with big white lettering that said, Galaxy Leader. This was 33 seconds of, honestly, not that much.
But then, like that, this video had 13 million views. Because, I mean, look at him. Okay, I don't understand why people obsess over actor Timothy Chalamet either, but Tim Houthi Chalamet's celebrity was in some ways an example of a new way that people are consuming news and information, coming at it kind of sideways. At least that was true for me.
Tim Houthi was how we learned more about the Red Sea and the attacks.
Yeah, this is WBUR. It's a NPR local for Boston. I did this interview, I think, months ago, like months and months ago. And I believe they just only recently came out with it. But every day, 7 days a week for 8 hours or more, Hasan Piker is live on the video game streaming platform, Twitch. This is where he shares his political commentary with a dedicated community of viewers, many of whom fall into a particularly sought-after electoral demographic, young men. One of the dominant theories about re-election of President Donald Trump in November 2024 was that it was aided by commentators like Piker, brash and broy. But Piker is a socialist, considerably to the left of the mainstream Democratic Party. He gets into streamer beefs, but he also talks a lot about empathy and bringing a spirit of charitability to political discourse. What kind of effect does he have on his community and their political activism? Who's tuning in 50 hours a week to get their news from one guy? Spoiler, it's not just 20-something men. And really, who is that guy? Endless Thread talks to Hasan Piker and his fans. Did they interview my fans too? That's crazy. Weren't you live for this interview? No. I did this offline like months ago. I forget exactly when.
To the Red Sea, where the UK says Iranian-backed Houthi rebels have carried out their largest attack so far on shipping lanes. The Ministry of Defense.
That is the BBC. But we didn't first listen to that report until a few weeks ago.
No. My understanding of Yemeni fighters disrupting a key international shipping route in reaction to the war in Gaza started in the diffuse, crackling, digital, foamy broadcast waves of the internet, somewhere between TikTok and Twitch.
Okay, that's crazy that this is a straight-up journalist on NPR, Boston Public Radio, openly admitting that his perspective shifted on the issue that the Ansar Allah movement was presenting, the reasons as to why they were dealing with the Red Sea in the ways that they were on my Twitch stream. Okay? That's crazy. Hey, Rashid, how old are you? Where are you from originally in Yemen?
Let's orient ourselves a bit here. We're talking about the southern end of the Red Sea, which flows past Yemen, Eritrea,
and
Djibouti. It's this key shipping route because it brings giant ships back and forth between the Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea and the east coast of Africa and the Mediterranean Sea and Europe. It is a massive shortcut for getting goods between the East and the West.
An age-old plan to shorten the distance between Europe and the Orient by linking the Red Sea to the Mediterranean.
Yes, to get from the East to the West, you have to head through the Middle East. And when these attacks started a little over a year ago, the ships under attack were traveling up and down the coastline of Yemen, which has a front seat to the Red Sea's shipping route.
The Red Sea, the Suez Canal that connects it to the Mediterranean, this is a zone that's had a ton of all kinds of commercial shipping for a long time.
and a lot of conflict. Since forever. Since Moses?
The long history of man's efforts to create a passage through the Egyptian land barrier can be traced back to 2000 BC.
The Houthis are a group of fighters in Yemen that are vaguely associated with Iran, and they're in their own intense armed conflict with their neighbor, Saudi Arabia.
They've driven a civil war in Yemen against the government there, with a resulting intense humanitarian crisis. We are not going to try and explain this conflict further right now.
Which is probably for the best. But the Houthis have been reportedly doing this because they believe Israel, the U.S., and its allies were doing nothing to stop the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
It's not.
It seems fair to say that
It's not AI. Not everything is AI. You need to stop being brain dead Zoomers. Secondly, there's not much else I can do in terms of like visual, visual guides here, because while we conducted this interview technically on camera, and obviously I didn't know that this was going to be the way that they were going to cover this interview, because we talked about a variety of different issues. This is a radio broadcast, okay? This is a radio broadcast for WBUR, which is the Boston NPR affiliate, okay? This is Boston NPR. It's an interview conducted for a radio broadcast for the show Endless Threads. I assume the podcast Endless Thread. Please, I just want you guys, I have never heard this either. I want to hear what their perspective is. I didn't know this was going to be about, I did not know that this was going to be about like my interview with Timothée Chalamet. I didn't even realize that they were going to predominantly feature that interview, okay? God, you guys are so annoying. Put some Subway Surfers up. Just watch, please. Please, just watch.
Right now, politics and armed conflict have a much more direct and highly personal impact on daily life in Yemen, to say nothing of the larger region.
But much of the way we experience this story in the U.S., unless we have a personal or family connection to Yemen or the merchant mariner industry, this feels and is pretty far off.
Timothée Chalamet, also known as Rashid Al-Haddad online, brought it closer somehow, especially after he did a big interview with what we might call a news delivery service.
I'm doing journalism, chat. Calm down, okay?
Not the New York Times or BBC or NPR, organizations that might at least have a few reporters stationed in the region near the Red Sea.
What platform is best to talk on? He said Instagram. Okay, that works.
By the way, 19-year-old Timothée Chalamet said he was not a Houthi fighter, but he did seem to have the trappings of an influencer.
He said, Hasna, wait a few minutes until I set up the lighting. Bro, this dude is a professional, dude.
The news service getting the big interview with the Chalamet of the moment also had good lighting, access to translators, and a huge engaged audience. Associated Press, Reuters,
It's kind of crazy because, like, I do make the sausage in real time. Normally, you never see how the sausage is made. You see a finalized product where news outlets that will do exactly what I did in real time in front of you guys will basically like they were saying, they'll have a station journalist, probably not in Sanaa, but they'll have like an affiliate maybe on the ground or somewhere close enough. They'll have Arabic translators or can speak Arabic and will interview this person. And you don't normally see this happening in real time. That's, I think, a unique aspect of the way I operate. And then you see the finished product where like that entire interview in and of itself, and even like how we put it together, would never be seen by the world, right? You would only see like maybe 2 to 3 minutes, like specific answers that you're hearing from Timothée Chalamet at the time.
NBC? No. More of a dude who's a professional dude.
Hasan Piker.
People say, Hasan Abi, you've changed. It's like, I haven't changed. You did, bitch. I've never heard a Democrat be like, man, what do we got to do about this military budget? We are literally the last political space online that is a holdout, that is majority men, that isn't like insanely politically.
Not insanely effed politically, maybe, but definitely polarizing. And we're not even really talking politics yet. We're talking generations.
Whenever we ask people if they know Hasan Piker, it goes one of three ways. It's either no idea who you're talking about.
Or, oh yeah, is that hot guy?
Or the streamer? Yeah, definitely. And these answers divide along generational lines. Hasan also divides people on feelings about the war in Gaza. Political lines in the U.S., too.
Also, lines of gender. But you take all the people on one side of all those lines and put them together?
You get an impressive audience. 3 million followers just on the video game streaming site Twitch. Another 1.5 million on YouTube. And his hours-long live streams. There can be 20 to 30,000 people watching and listening to Hasan at any given moment.
That's how you know. That's how you know this is old, because now it's up there. Now it's more than that. Now it's a Saturday, so we got 25 in here, but now it's 30 to 40,000, as you guys know. So, just saying, this was an older interview.
That's an audience that competes with WBUR's largest average broadcast radio listening audience in Boston. The same audience as our entire station in a major metro area. But it's one Twitch stream, one guy, Hasan Piker, 33 years old.
He's ripped, a true Chad.
And as Americans celebrate or slide into despair following the second election of...
Chad, stop saying this is AI. It's not AI. I literally had a conversation with these people. Can you please stop saying this is... What is wrong with people, man? What the hell? Why do you guys keep saying AI? It's not... Like, I talked to these human beings, okay? It was a real interview.
President Donald J. Trump, an increasingly popular Chad.
I'm AI.
Thanks to an increasingly popular, seemingly endless stream.
There's a couple things that I talk about that, basically break people's brains. Peter Thiel owns the country now. You understand? You don't want solutions. You don't want to understand why this violence happens. I do.
I'm Ben Brock Johnson.
I'm Amory Sievertson, and you're listening to Endless Thread.
We're coming to you from WBUR, Boston's NPR news stream.
And on today's episode, a look at how the media landscape and news consumption are changing through one example. The guy people are calling, quote, the Joe Rogan of the left, who has bad news for people who say things like, he's the Joe Rogan of the left.
I just don't think that we can podcast our way out of this problem. I just don't think that the
Democrats...
Democrats...
Come on, man. Come on.
Whatever you've heard of Hasan, whatever you think of him, however you found him, or if you've never heard of him or found him, let's start with some simple facts. His parents are Turkish. His father is a political scientist and economist who has helped support the Future Party in that country.
Chatters who have never listened to a singular NPR piece, I think, don't understand NPR voice, and that's why they're thinking this sounds like AI. No, dude, they dictate perfectly, okay? That's what it is. That's just, they enunciate in a way where it almost comes across as robotic. And even the cuts that they put in with my voice sounds like AI as well. They got NPR voice. And also the way that they cut certain stuff, even there's an NPR filter, I guess, where it also sounds like I'm doing AI voice.
In opposition to the right-wing Justice and Development Party. His mom is an architectural historian teaching at the Institute of Technology in New Jersey.
And Piker's uncle started the Young Turks, the popular progressive news network that began on the radio, jumped to YouTube, and is now played on some television channels.
4.5 long years of we're making progress. We're not making progress.
You're heading off a cliff, dude, and you don't even realize it.
Hasan's of an even younger generation than the Young Turks. He's on YouTube, but he's most established on the video game streaming platform Twitch, where people watch other people play video games. And in Hasan's case, people watch him talking about politics. But if you're going to stream on Twitch, you're probably going to do both.
The first time I came across him was when, in the election of 2020, he streamed a Get Out the Vote game of Among Us with Representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar. When you watch this video, as AOC gets onto the stream with Hasan, he seems pretty psyched.
We came a long way from 15 people watching me play Fortnite with Felix Biederman to playing Among Us with the top content creators and also two of my favorite politicians.
The Among Us stream, just a little more than an hour long total, netted nearly 700,000 concurrent viewers. Just to give you a sense, that competes with the prime viewing period between 8 and 11 p.m. of CNN, which, by the way, is also putting Hasan on.
This is Hasan Piker.
This is my dog, Kaya.
Piker was 29 back then, and about to watch Biden sweep into office and topple Donald Trump's attempt at re-election in the midst of a brutal pandemic. When you watch this 4-year-old stream, Hasan seems legit giddy at what's happening. And it's this odd combination of video game nerdery and progressive political energy. Or maybe it's not that odd of a combination.
Hasan Piker represents a huge change in the way people consume information in 2025, especially digital natives, people who have only really been around after the internet and computers.
Increasingly, they don't...
I was thinking a lot about this, actually. You know how people always ask me, Hasan, like, what has your attitude really changed on? I don't think my values have changed. I've been fairly consistent on that stuff for the past decade. And you can check that against, like, you know, commentary from the past 10 years that's, you know, out there, right? From the Young Turks all the way until now. And you'll see I'm advocating for the same exact shit. Having said that, there is one thing that I was thinking about that has changed. I think that, like, my hope in the Democratic Party, I think, has eroded almost entirely. Like, I always had this attitude that regardless of the fact that one of the two major parties in a bourgeois democracy is never going to bring about revolution, I understood that on principle, but I still believe that there was a way to... Like, there was a way to engage in harm reduction. There was a way to engage in harm reduction that the Democrats were going to abide by if you voted for them. And I think, like, year over year, election cycle after election cycle, the Democrats consistently showed me and anyone else that was paying attention that they were not interested in doing harm reduction at all. And I think that's the reason why when I see someone like Dean, right, the liberal Spider-Man debate Dean, right? Like, I understand as a 19-year-old, if this is your first foray into, if this is your first, like, political cycle that you're actively defending the Democrats on, like, I get why you would be more, I don't want to say naive, but, like, you'd be more hopeful that the Democrats will do the right thing. Whereas, you know, go through like 3 of those and you'll understand very quickly that optimism in that regard is quickly going to be cast aside for an assumption that the Democrats are basically controlled opposition. This isn't like every single Democrat, for sure. And my attitude, I would say, shifted from, you know, Democrats are definitely better than the Republicans to, they're marginally better than the Republicans to harm reduction to we need to use the platform that the Democrats offer to existing progressive voices in an effort to continue building up a labor movement, to continue building out like outside pressure, outside mechanisms of pressure that are not immediately within the lap of the party. To like, I don't even know where we're going at this point. Like, I just, I've never been closer to an advocacy for building a third party from the ground up than this very moment. I will admit that it's something that, like, I wouldn't say I'm as far as you know, Michael from Pennsylvania is on this issue. I truly don't. I don't know. I truly can't see a way out of this beyond like either completely reconstructing the party or looking for a alternative, like developing an alternative at all. I tweeted about this this morning. Who could have seen this coming? Everyone. We kept yelling about this. I think it's time for the liberals who scream at the left to bury the hatchet and actively reconstruct the Democratic Party to be a real opposition party with a bold vision of change or build a real alternative. And it's just like, I don't know how we do that. I'm being radically honest with you. I don't know how we do that, but changes need to happen immediately.
Compartmentalize their different flavors of content. They don't go to one place for news, another place for lifestyle, information, etc. They go to the same place for all the things. And usually that same place is not a brand, per se. It's a person.
We wanted to hear from some of these people, so we reached out on Reddit and got a bunch of responses. Some Hasan fans have requested that we only use their first name because, well, Hasan takes political positions that some employers might view as extreme.
I had gone through different posts, reading comments, because I just basically view reading Reddit as like people watching, and kind of bookmark Hasan in my head as like, I got to figure this guy out.
This is Janet. She's in her early 40s, lives in Colorado, goes against a few of the larger characteristics of Hasan's audience, but she's part of a growing demographic.
Percentage of male went down. Percentage of female went up. We're up big.
That's Hasan streaming his annual Hasanabi community census on Twitch. Hasan's subreddit lists, quote, 151,000 comrades as its follower count, which is where we found Janet.
Janet started out reading Hasanabi hate on Reddit, but she's a comrade now. She's watching his Twitch stream every day. And it's not just Janet who's taking it all in.
My toddler gets a little bit of TV time in the morning, so when Hasan starts, the TV goes off for him and we throw him into lunch. He knows the Hasan is streaming song and we'll start doing sign language for food when that song comes on, so I've kind of ruined the baby, but...
A number of the people we talked to watch and listen to Hasan while at work or while doing schoolwork. But Janet's home with her baby, so...
It's on my 80-inch television. It's in the front of my living room. We have a really open floor plan, so I can hear it while I'm cleaning, while I'm hanging out with the baby, doing flashcards and whatever. He's basically just like our talk radio during the day, except we get to look at him.
We heard this a lot, actually. Hasan as replacement for the radio.
But he's streaming video, too, so it's pretty similar to cable news. And while it's not a 24-hour Hasan cycle, it is 7 days a week, along with a serious regimen of weight training, which you kind of have to do if you're sitting in a gaming chair for that long every day. He has a background team running a Discord chat, doing video graphics, and managing the community.
I got little babies listening. I got to stop cursing. This is why I got to stop cursing.
Behind the scenes.
This consistency has, over time, just grown his reach, which in turn turned the heads of the people trying to run the country in the last election. Hasan was invited to the Democratic Convention. He was looked at by many in the run-up to the election as Exhibit A that Kamala Harris and company were talking to the right people to help them talk to the people who were going to vote. But then, the other team's podcast Reach Out game turned out to be a lot more full-on.
The following is a conversation with Donald Trump on this, the Lex Friedman podcast.
How long have we been talking?
A long time.
Let's go.
Probably like 3 hours.
He's one of the most famous people on earth, and I'm grateful for this chance to learn more about the man behind the headlines. Today's guest is Donald Trump.
The Associated Press has called the presidency for Republican Donald Trump.
Ever since, Hasan has been on what almost feels like a group therapy tour, talking to a lot of legacy media organizations and helping to explain to them how they could have possibly missed this thing that the polls really bore out, that young men were breaking for Trump.
I think Trump speaks to male insecurities better.
It's not necessarily flooding the market with like a bunch of liberals. Like, if we had like 8 more Pod Save Americas that kind of look like me, for example, like more bro-y, right? Then that would be fine. It's like, no, you can't podcast your way out of this problem.
There it is again. You can't podcast your way out of this problem. And yet, it seems like if the Democratic Party could podcast or stream its way into the hearts of young men, Hasan could be their guy. Because he courts more than the Janets. He also courts a lot of Jadens.
Right now, Heber Springs has a population of about 7,000 people.
24-year-old Jaden didn't find Hasan Piker in his hometown of Heber Springs, Arkansas.
It's a pretty close-knit community.
Arkansas heads, rise up. My slander against Arkansas has not gone unnoticed. I apologize.
Unity. A lot of people know each other. A lot of people will go to the same church, for example. All the beliefs of everyone are pretty much shared throughout the entire community.
That shared belief system, in Jaden's experience, has always been church-focused. Growing up, he says a lot of the social interaction was through church or trips with church groups. One of these particular trips to some cabins in the woods he remembers in particular.
It was cold, it was windy, it was so miserable.
There was always a theme or topic of discussion for these trips.
For this trip, they decided to make it about homosexuality.
Jaden thinks this trip happened when gay marriage got national protections in the U.S. He says that the trip turned out to be a bunch of adults telling a bunch of middle schoolers about how homosexuality and gay marriage were ruining society.
I had so many experiences like that, kind of around church and things like that.
When Jaden started to spend more time online in high school, he discovered perspectives that didn't really match the homogeneity of Heber Springs.
And when he went to the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, his own belief structure started to shift even more. Jaden says straight up that the only reason his belief structure has changed is because college and the internet.
Which is where he found Hasan.
I thought that the way he broke down certain topics was just really easy to understand, easy to digest.
Digest what exactly? Hasan's worldview.
Whether it's, American foreign policy being ultimately damaging to the world, or whether it be an advocacy for enshrining abortion rights in the Constitution, gun control, like reasonable gun safety measures that must be implemented, focusing on universal health care and free college education. All of these things have not improved at all.
Jaden says that Hasan Piker's point of view on a bunch of different topics felt logical and approachable, and that they were ultimately compassionate towards America's most underprivileged people, unhoused people, veterans, racial minorities, working class Americans, etc.
It was definitely sort of a gradual realization that a lot of these things that the church and conservative-minded people were saying were concepts and ideas that actually went against the Bible in some ways. I think that was kind of the biggest contradiction that I sort of realized was when they talk about politics, it's pretty clear to realize that these people are not 100% for loving thy neighbor and looking out for those less fortunate than you.
Jaden.
Back in Heber Springs, Jaden's parents and his brothers are not watching one of Hasan Piker's streams 3 days a week, like Jaden is. His parents are watching Fox News. His little brother?
He's definitely sort of that Joe Rogan, Till Coney, or Kill Tony, Andrew Schultz kind of audience member.
So family conversations, even though Jaden gets along well with his parents and siblings, can be a little tricky. But Jaden has a new vocabulary.
Definitely one benefit of tuning into Hasan and all these other left-leaning political commentators is that you're able to have discussions with these people and introduce new perspectives on looking at things that they have definitely not been exposed to before.
Maybe one of the reasons Hasan resonates with people like Jaden, who identifies as a cis white male, is that in a lot of ways, he looks the part.
Hasan has said he was teased as a younger kid for being, as people in the 1950s might say, kind of a shrimp. And like many young people before him, Hasan channeled that teasing into time at the gym.
Which, in turn, feeds a persona that, on the surface, might feel like it's part of the manosphere that many of us have heard about. The online spaces where men prioritize alpha masculine behavior and ideals above all else. He does look and a little bit sound the part.
Bruh. Dude. Oh, dude. Holy dude. It's like, bitch, what do you mean?
But this is another case where you have to look closely enough to see the differences between streamers, who definitely don't line up along the same clear, bright lines between, say, Fox and MSNBC, or even NPR and the Wall Street Journal.
And yet, the streamer world is drawing more and more of the audience that used to go to big broadcast news organizations away from that and into things like a video game streaming platform that might have a bunch of political thought mixed up with a game of Among Us or Counter-Strike.
Hasan Piker has drawn a lot of controversy for his positions and his statements. And I'm not talking about
bitch.
I'm talking more about,
if you look at the civilian deaths versus the deaths of soldiers, Hamas's percentages are infinitely better than Israel. That's just facts. So no, Hamas is the lesser evil.
If you're on for 8 hours a day.
I love that line because it is so that right there is so perfectly, that right there is crafted so perfectly for liberals to go, well, my conditioning dictates that I'm always on board with the lesser evil. Like, it is virtually impossible. The only people that will have issue with that are people that are already completely supercharged with pro-Israel propaganda, that where they will actively deny the truth. The genocide lovers hate that line. Yeah, that's why when Fox News posted that on their article, saying that like I'm a terrorist or whatever, I didn't really have an issue with that being posted on that article, because that is a correct statement and that is exactly what I mean. I'm saying exactly what I mean. It wasn't like out of context at all. It is something that I stand by,
7 days a week, speaking to a large audience of young people, and your general topic is political thought, you're going to eventually say some things that stir the pot. Hasan has opted into the battle royale and tete-a-tete world of streamers.
Like this face-off with a famous streamer called Destiny.
I'm almost positive that you said that you wouldn't vote for Joe Biden, that you said you would like go shack up and live in the woods somewhere, which is cool because you have the privilege to do so. But
I said I'm considering not voting for Joe Biden and living up in the woods and living in an anarcho-primitivist lifestyle, which is like the second. It's a meme, dude.
Okay.
Destiny, a streamer known for being pugnacious, had a falling out with
old ass debate. That's like they went back into the mines for that one. I don't even remember having that conversation. That's crazy.
Hasan, that was seismic in the streaming world.
And Ethan Klein.
Even back then, that dude was still doing the same thing where it's like, wow, you made a joke, but I will actually take it completely seriously and make it seem as though it's real political commentary. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to live in the woods. I'm not an anarcho-primitivist either. Like, well, I've destroyed you in the marketplace of ideas because you have been found making a joke.
An American-Israeli YouTuber and podcaster who used to collaborate with Hasan on a podcast has since sworn off that partnership.
Mostly because of the duo's inability to have a measured debate on
brother. Okay.
What has been happening in Gaza. Just a few weeks ago, Ethan released a 2-hour-long takedown attack.
By the way, Ethan is not Israeli. He's not. I mean, he's an American. He is an American through and through. Like, straight up. He lived in Israel, but he's not Israeli.
Hasan, much of which seemed
I don't even know if he has an Israeli passport.
Focused on Hasan's support of Palestinians.
Hasan's chat had been calling me a Zionist, baby-killing genocider. Maybe it is unreasonable that I'm asking him to moderate his chat for a friend.
Hasan responded in kind while on vacation in Japan.
Yeah, dude, I am pro-Palestine. That's it. If that's news to you, you are the dumbest baby on the planet.
This, we can say, is giving streamer, big time. Though big news organizations do it too. Newspapers throwing shade at each other through competitive reporting and op-eds, even presidential endorsements.
What's interesting about this piece is that this was far before, like, I interviewed, and they briefly asked me about Ethan in that interview, but this was far before the content puke. This was far before, that back and forth in its entirety. So it's like interesting that they're like, I wonder what they did with this, because I have no idea what the final product looks like. But I do remember like briefly talking about it. And at the time, because when this interview happened, I still was, when this interview initially happened, I still was very much trying not to talk about Ethan at all. So that's why they have snippets of me from Japan in the piece.
Hey, remember when newspapers did presidential endorsements?
Somebody check the Jeff Bezos Twitch stream.
A slap fight is a slap fight. But underneath the bros and the bitches, the bluster, the muscles, Hasan's pushing political thought too.
So it's time for us to @ him in the chat. And we will when we come right back.
Oh, there's no more mention of this after the fact?
First. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
The end of this pod
platforms.
Though instead of a brand of, hey, I'm just a guy who used to host Fear Factor asking questions, Hasan's brand is more, dare we say, earnest? Let's find out.
I'm Hasan Piker, also known as Hasan on Twitch.
Why are people adding me? What? Why are people adding me? I'm confused. They said it? Oh, I didn't hear it.
Or Hasan the Han on Twitter, or Hasan D. Piker on TikTok and many other social medias. I'm 33
Hasan
years
the
old.
Han. Why does it sound like that?
So I have all of these different usernames in every single website. It's a big mess.
Do you remember your first screen name?
My first screen name was actually Hellboy Hasan.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
That was way back in the day.
Can I ask what might seem like an overly simplistic question, but why stream for 8 hours a day?
I really enjoy it. And also there's a lot of news to cover. Outside of that, I think that there's also a lot of fun to be had besides talking just about the news and doing outreach to a broader community and trying to get them on board to at least like view the world from a more charitable perspective to the way I see it.
So there's like a mission for you in that altruistic mission.
I mean, I don't know if it's altruistic. Some people might consider it to be, propagandistic, I guess, or is that even a word? They would say it's propaganda. And
would you say it's propaganda?
That. I do, yeah. I don't think propaganda necessarily is a bad word, but it's considered a bad word when someone uses it in especially the Western world. But yeah, I think that you can be honest with the things that you're talking about.
Now, Hasan told us he's a political commentator, not a journalist. But what gives some journalists indigestion about Hasan is that some people do get their news primarily, or in some cases exclusively, from Hasan, as if he really is the news.
As you've heard from Hasan already, depending upon when you jump into the stream and how long you listen, it could be both.
I mean, there's definitely something different.
Megan is a 37-year-old from Connecticut.
If something happens and I'm not there for it, it's like I missed that moment where like the chat tells him like Trump just got shot. And then like immediately he's switching over to the live feed. And then right away chatters are sending him links. Like this is what we know so far. It's addictive. It makes me not want to miss it.
In a way, Hasan is really a new filter for the news. When it happens, he's reading articles of real news outlets and commenting in front of his audience, and his live chat is feeding those articles to him in real time. It's almost like a live updating discussion feedback loop where Hasan and his audience are talking to each other about what is happening.
Megan didn't find Hasan looking for news, though.
I think it was actually his Chad Vice segment that I saw first.
Can you still not nut?
Oh yeah, yes.
Oh no! End it, dog. What are you doing?
Yes, Chad Vice, where Hasan Piker gives advice to dudes about how to be a Chad. In internet parlance, a desirable, successful, with the ladies kind of guy. And Hasan's goal seems to be to do this Chad Vice segment without all the misogyny and toxicity.
Again, a perfect example of the Gen Z and millennial audience's habits. Less about the network, more about a person they trust and the community.
People, I think, come in and they're like, well, that's a cool guy. He seems progressive. He doesn't seem like an asshole. He looks kind of broy, maybe a little too broy for me. Or maybe that's beneficial for a lot of young men, that they look at someone that they identify with, like a white dude who likes to work out and play video games, and they go, like this seems like a different community than the one I'm used to.
If the manosphere is what insecure young men are discovering and pouring into as they search for a way to navigate masculinity in what some might call a boring dystopia, Hasan can represent a different set of solutions for the same problems.
Specifically, like he always says, if you put in the hard work, if you focus on bettering yourself, like everybody can be a 7.
Alex is another Hasanabi fan we talked to.
His journey going to the gym, losing weight, and how it like changed his mindset. He was also like a big inspiration for me in that regard. I started going to the gym. I ended up losing like 60 pounds, I think.
Hell yeah.
And now like today, like years later, I'm in the best shape I've ever been in.
Alex hasn't just transformed physically because of Hasan. He's also changed his politics. and even what he's studying in college so that he can be a lawyer who works on labor rights.
Had I not found Hasan's community, I like to think that I'd maybe still have these views, but there's no guarantee, I'm lucky that I found this community as opposed to, something else.
Granted, like Alex,
I can't wait for liberals to clip certain aspects of this interview, get mad at the journalists, call them, Hasan dick riders, harass them into oblivion, and never show their sheltered audience this aspect of my commentary and what I try to do. Desperately try to get people to be the best version of themselves and desperately try to get people to see the world in a more empathetic lens. Never that. Always just like, oh man, this guy's a terrorist supporter. He loves terrorism. He's getting his chatters to love terrorism. Why? Because he's against the Israeli government doing a genocide. Let's see. Let's see if my prediction on this is correct. Okay. H3H3 Productions subreddit. Apparently, Hasan said again on stream that there's no proof Hamas committed. NPR loves terrorism now, I guess. Right on the money, baby. 39 minutes ago. He's in here. The person who posted this is in here, or at least saw the Twitter post, or saw my Instagram post, and instantly ran to the liberal H3H3 subreddit, supposedly progressive H3H3 subreddit. I'll never understand how people can be this influential. Oh, wait, what? I'll never understand how people can just be these influential media personalities and be so ignorant. There's no justice in the world. Please, what will it take for you to shake yourself out of this stupor? These people are knowledgeable media figures. They're not just like random people who are oblivious. They went so far. If you were to listen to the interview, you would recognize that they went so far back that they found like old debates that I had with Destiny at the time. This has become a snark sub. This is what I was saying about Ethan's hypocrisy. Ethan understandably hates snark subs. I have talked about how snark subs are unhealthy and they're bad for the people that, they're bad for the people that entertain the snark subs, and they're certainly bad for the people in the crosshairs, like the content creators in the snark subs. Everybody understands this. Ethan certainly understands this, except he operates a snark subreddit and also a snark podcast at this point. Like, look at this. Any number of different people within the crosshairs. What is this? POV Hasan takes you hostage? What the what is this? 800 upvotes. Bro really added loner box in the thumbnail after he criticized the video. Hasan talks about Polish people with such disdain. It's bizarre. Noah Samson is pro-genocide. Like, random memes about me. Like, this is insane. How do you not realize this is a snark sub now? You have officially changed your entire community's outlook, So which is it? Is Ethan crashing out becoming right-wing Zionist, or is he literally among the top left-leaning online shows like your own story says? That's so funny. No, he is. He's crashing out and becoming a right-wing Zionist and bringing all of you along with it. Like, where are the H3 posts, man? Made my Hasan-loving best friend watch a new H3 with me last night, and she locked in. I guess my question is, if you think personally that snark subreddits and snark podcasts are unhealthy, why the f are you operating one against your former podcast co-host? Like, you're bitching about your own fans that disagreed with you and left your community because you banned them because they correctly interpreted all of your arguments that were sneakily and sometimes not so sneakily pro-Israel in the aftermath of October 7. And that bricked your brain so hard that you wanted to sue every random Redditor that has ever criticized you, sue every content creator that's ever happened to criticize you at a time when, like, the American government is actively bouldering towards fascism. Anti-Semitism is at an all-time high, and your crosshairs are locked into people who are personally getting upset at you for operating what previously was a relatively sizable progressive space online and turning that into a faucet of hatred for anyone that has ever said, Ethan, maybe you should stop spending all of your time on pro-Palestinian voices if you truly are pro-Palestine. That is what this entire situation is. This is what the podcast has become. This is what the subreddit has become. I'm hearing more and more unhinged shit from Ethan on a daily basis on my Twitter timeline, where he apparently is calling Jewish Voice for Peace tokens. Every Jewish person that's an anti-Zionist is a token now. Like, this is some real Michael Rappaport shit. It's alarming, to say the least. Yeah, he wants to sue Noah Sampson for making an entire video where he correctly points out how many supposedly centrist drama slop tubers or people who masquerade as progressives have done subtle and not so subtle pro-Israel propaganda by not covering the actions of Israel and hyper-focusing exclusively on people who do cover the actions of Israel in Gaza. Yeah, he's going after Matt Lieb. He's going after all these other people. And the people that he goes after, they receive a torrent of hatred, okay? When you go after someone like this, when you go after a content creator, small or large, when you go after them and you actively try to deplatform them, as he has successfully done so, like, their replies are flooded with the most Islamophobic shit. And at first, I remember talking about this with Frogan, right? When I was like, there's no way those are Ethan's fans. There's no way those are Ethan fans who are like saying unhinged Islamophobic shit. I think at this stage, they absolutely are. You have changed the dynamic of your community, and you have changed the overarching politics of your community. And those who remain, who are major fans of you, are also changing alongside the rest of the people that came in afterwards. It's so weird, and everyone can see how weird it is. It's so strange. Like, everyone can see the transparent hypocrisy of constantly complaining about snarks, which there is validity to complain about, while simultaneously operating a fairly successful snark subreddit and a snark podcast. Anyway, let's continue with this.
Hasan's had his own awakenings and political evolutions too. Trans rights is an example.
It's not something that I hide. I used to have transphobic opinions. I mean, this was a decade plus ago, but it doesn't matter. Like, it's more so about like always being charitable and admitting when you're wrong, and maybe developing a better mindset around certain things with more information.
One of the biggest criticisms leveraged at Hasan is not that he's doing irresponsible journalism, sourcing stories as they happen during a stream from online users who are dropping links and rumors into a stew of a live chat log next to his video stream that moves so fast fellow kids lurkers like myself can barely comprehend it.
And not even that he is, as he says, also making propaganda, often pro-Palestine propaganda, which he admits fully up front. No. The biggest criticism of Hasan from the right is that he's extreme, which is also the criticism from other people on the left, or at least the center of the left, because Hasan is an avowed socialist. Not exactly the messaging a lot of powerful Democrats are going for. And that goes both ways. Hasan's support of the Democrats seems to be somewhere between tenuous and fully in the rearview mirror.
DNC was my turning point.
And I'd like to welcome you all to the Democratic National Convention roll call.
Why? What made you turn in that moment?
I was shocked at how not tapped into the real world I was when I was at the heart of where things are happening. I was genuinely shocked at how out of touch I was with everything else that was going on in the world. Because when you're there, when you're in that bubble, when the DC bubble comes to Chicago, right? You're still in that DC bubble. And I now understand why so many people, so many staffers, so many analysts, so many of these guys that, write these think pieces and whatnot are so unimaginably out of touch with the needs and opinions of regular old, American working class people.
And when you talk to regular working class people who listen to Hasan, like Megan, you do get the sense that he's having a real impact on their opinions and their feelings about the world, whatever their lived experience.
For Megan, that lived experience includes a period of homelessness. After she failed at her second college attempt, feelings of shame kept her from going home.
despite that home life being one that Megan describes as privileged and supportive. She's back on her feet now. She works as a court reporter, doing transcriptions of court recordings. And in her spare time, she volunteers helping expunge minor marijuana infractions from people's records. But
it's so much closer to all of us than we know. And Hasan does a really good job of helping people to remember that these people are just like them.
The person that you see on the street that has like leathery skin at this point from being under the sun, from sun damage, sun exposure for many, many years, who clearly is not mentally well, right? That is the last tier of homelessness.
Hasan has definitely helped me to feel like that's something that I can share with people, because previously it was like shameful. I was ashamed of that. Now, if I do share that with someone, I will follow it up with the tiers of homelessness and, try to leave people with like a little bit more empathy for people that they see panhandling or whatever.
Empathy and charity. Feisty as he may be on the screen, these are words you hear a lot from Hasan and his fans.
More charitable to those ideas.
You'll never hear that from my naysayers, though. That's why whenever I say I really care about being charitable to every single person, understanding where they're coming from, you'll never, ever in a million years hear that from my haters who will laugh at that. They're like, I've never seen you be charitable. It's like, no, that's the whole point. Trying to be charitable to the best of your ability until the person on the other side of the screen shows you that they do not deserve said charity, that they're here to simply piss you off, to simply f your conversation up. That is precisely the reason why I'm always charitable to content creators as well. Content creators with massive communities that I know I can speak to directly. When they turn the crosshairs directly on me and make their entire output how bad I am and the way I see the world and my politics, all of a sudden, you're going to have a ton more haters. People that could have just as easily been in support, allies in the struggle, those who can actively advocate for a better future will then turn all of their attention and priorities to being like, no, this guy is bad. It comes across as though I'm being selfish here and I only care about myself or my own brand or whatever. But like, no, these people have liberals especially, or centrists and people who love drama online have turned me into an avatar for left-wing values. Okay. The problem, this is precisely the reason why I have tried to be as charitable as possible to XUC, Asmongold, H3H3, even Destiny initially. And regardless of how these people treat me in general, I still will demand you do the same. Okay. Especially for normies. You cannot help yourself, bro. Lol. I don't know what you mean by that, but when you're having a conversation with a normie, you cannot fly off. You can't just like pop off on them. You can't get ridiculously angry at them. You have to always approach the subject matter from a point of empathy, from a point of understanding, like what their background is, what their social conditioning looks like, what their material conditions look like. You have to be normal. If you treat everyone as though they are reactionary fascists across the board, you're not gonna be able to convince anyone. You know, wasn't the other guy's complaint that you weren't reining in your audience while they accused him of wanting to kill babies? Yes, that is the most hyperbolic approach to that subject from a person who felt wronged at the time. That is like the pivotal reason as to why he's still been doing a year-long deplatforming campaign that has been completely and utterly unsuccessful. In terms of the actual impact of deplatforming, it's been unsuccessful. It has been, however, successful in like convincing his own audience of normies who are not super political into thinking that I'm a terrorist or whatever. I'm like the arch villain of American progressives. Having said that, the people that were calling him a Zionist at the time, not baby killer, okay, but a Zionist at the time, were saying that because of his output, because he just kept saying things that were pro-Israel from a liberal Zionist perspective. And of course, a community like this one, or any community that understands the propaganda dynamics, of course they thought that. Of course. And I kept trying to both privately and publicly explain to him, like, Ethan, the reason why people feel this way about you is because they don't know the full, depth of your opinion. Because at the time, I did truly think that he was pro-Palestine. And I kept telling him, like, you can't say that, like, a gay sex worker is going to be thrown off of a building under Hamas leadership for saying that they're pro-Palestine if you don't want people to think you're a Zionist. That is just a pure, insane Zionist propaganda talking point. That's what you hear from the likes of Ben Shapiro or a Jordan Peterson or a Trump, right? Of course, people are going to assume that you are that way. And to be fair to everyone that, like, clocked him early on, he certainly showcases his attitude a lot more openly now. He mocks your talk to Sam Cedar line now. Lamau, what a freak. Yeah, I know. That was my last message I ever sent to him. The last message I ever sent to him, and he's the one who leaked this to say it was inappropriate because he claimed it was anti-Semitic. I went back and I looked at it recently to see what I had said, because he had texted me on September 29th, and I didn't respond to him because he saw, like, a clip of me saying, I have no problem with Hezbollah. And he was like, oh, I really find it, like, ridiculous that you love Hezbollah or something. Like, he said, your support for terror orgs has been upsetting to see, my friend. I see nothing wrong with Hezbollah. Really troubled me, to be honest. I don't expect you to say anything, to be honest, because it's how you feel. And I think it's good that you're being honest. But I wanted to at least voice my concern to you. You don't need to respond if you don't want to, obviously, but I'm not expecting. That's what he said, right? And I didn't respond to him because, you know why I didn't respond to him at the time? Because I didn't want to talk to him about this issue at a time when I was covering the Israeli invasion of southern Lebanon. Like, that was his hyper focus on that. Okay. And after that, after all of before the context nuke, or before all of that, there was a point where I tried desperately, like my last ditch effort, my Hail Mary, where I said, and again, he is the one who has revealed this text message. So I don't have an issue, like, rereading it, so that people understand. On Thursday, October 24th at 7:22 a.m., after the deplatforming efforts really escalated, before the context nuke, but the deplatforming efforts had really escalated at that time, my last text message to Ethan, who he didn't reply to, was as follows. I don't know what happened over the last couple of months, but I'm trying this as a last resort. I don't think you see me as an honest person at all, but I really think you should talk to Sam Cedar privately. You clearly respect him a lot more than you respect me, and he has lived experience. This isn't about debates or drama or clips out of context. I have always admired and defended your open-mindedness and willingness to change your worldview, so I hope you will do this. In spite of everything that has happened, I hope you're doing fine. I hope your family is well and the crew is good. Also, not that it matters, but it was wild to see you using a clip titled Hamasabi from a unlisted link from a Destiny community account. October 24th, 2024, 7:22 a.m. He never replied to that. Instead, he went on his show, H3H3 Podcast, and turned around and said I was anti-Semitic for suggesting that Ethan Klein talk to Sam Cedar, a person he respects, not simply because he's a Jew. That's what Ethan's words were. Oh, you want me to talk to another Jew? No, because he has lived experience that I certainly do not, and because he is, or at least was at the time, a person that he respected. It didn't have to be on camera. I said, just talk to him. And I had also talked to Sam Cedar as well, privately, about this issue a long time ago. And Sam said he was totally on board with talking to Ethan privately. Now, if you look back at the time, around October, when I texted him that, if you look at the way I was talking about Ethan, both publicly and now, as you've seen, privately, versus how Ethan was talking about me publicly, you will see a dramatic difference. I tried to be as kind as I could and as understanding as I could until the very last moment. And all of that kindness, all of that charity, all of that grace was slapped away by a person who was so lost in the sauce that they just could not see the world in any way outside of the horse blinders that he had placed upon himself when it came to this issue. So no matter how much people try to rewrite history on all of the adjacent drama communities, you know the truth, okay? And it's not an accident that this exact same situation has played itself out a million times over with other content creators on silly ass drama too. Even with like XQC and shit. It takes a lot for me to just say, all right, you are not like, you are never going to be charitable. You are always going to throw me under the bus. You are always going to use me as a vehicle to draw ire and to gain clout off of. And not only that, but also actively undermine this project, actively undermine what I seek to do. What I do requires charitability from the uninitiated. If they are not charitable, if they immediately come in with the attitude that I'm like a bad person, a terrorist, a fake, phony, hypocritical socialist, with a metric ton of pre-existing resentment and animosity that people have towards socialism, towards leftist values, towards progressive values, like it's virtually impossible for me to convince people. It's virtually impossible for them to see what I have to say with an open mind. This is precisely the reason why I talk quite a bit about how like the drama slop tubers and other content creators who are apolitical, how they've played a formative role in undermining not just myself, but just like leftist thought in these spaces. And of course, in that process, understandably, a alternative content creators with like alternative visions, right-wing content creators are going to thrive in that environment. If all liberals care about is on content creators to the left of them and leftists in general, then yeah, right-wingers are going to blow the up in the process. It's normal, especially at a time when right-wing commentary is also popular. It's always been popular online, but it's especially become more popular. That's it. That was simply my point. A more charitable perspective.
It was that charitability.
A lot of charitability.
To put a finer point on it, while Hasan lives in this disembodied world of Twitch and YouTube streams, interviewing people who know suspected domestic terrorists at home or abroad,
he does seem to push this common theme of get involved in your local community and just help get things you believe in done. Which, again, whatever your political stripes, is probably good advice if you are not a billionaire, but you want to make meaningful impact. More than a year after Tim Houthi Chalamet had his moment in the sun, driving a skiff next to that big merchant ship Galaxy Leader, and becoming a special guest in Hasan's Twitch stream, the online world has moved on.
But the world hasn't. According to the latest reports from news and information services, new and old, that large ship remains under Houthi control. Its final destination, a question mark.
And in a way, we're all there too, unsure of what the future holds. For journalists, propagandists, billionaires, streamers, our goldfish attention spans in hyperdrive.
I think they made this before the Houthis released the ship and the people in it.
Somewhere
Like
in the back of our minds,
do an update on
trying to hold on to North Stars of how we should act towards our fellow humans, listening and watching and wondering what to do. Whatever the case, the stream is up.
Overall, the interviews were around Christmas. Yeah. Overall, great video. And, this is This is what it's like when you talk to actual journalists, adults who have a firm, established worldview and actual knowledge over geopolitical events, even if they don't fully align with my worldview. Okay? That's the difference. As opposed to a person with a political perspective, but not necessarily a lot of knowledge on any of these issues. That is the major difference. So if you are coming in here with hate and with the attitude that you're in here to like stuff up, you're here to like show the world the dangerous nature of my commentary, and you're like, why are adult journalists treating Hasan differently than my favorite drama slop tuber? It's because they're adults. It's because they're not only adults but also knowledgeable on this stuff, and not simply operating off of some very clear resentment that they feel towards an individual or a particular worldview that they want to disparage and tarnish, but aren't smart enough to craft a coherent narrative. So they have to rely on Redditors that have clipped shit out of context for over a year. That's the difference. And I think a lot of people basically see this, and they have two options, right? When they see stuff like this, they have two options. They're like, either everyone who is mature and grown up and knowledgeable on this issue are wrong or somehow blinded by Hasan's demeanor, or maybe the communities that I find myself in have a false assessment about the issue. Like maybe we were wrong. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I misunderstood. Now, for a lot of people, I think taking a deep breath, taking a step back, and admitting that like perhaps you didn't understand the issue in its entirety, and maybe you were duped, is gonna be difficult. That's gonna be very difficult. So I think that's the reason why I see a lot of people going in the exact opposite direction, where they go, no, it's stupid, sexy Hasan. He controls the media, and increasingly find themselves in the throes of like QAnon style conspiracies as they double down, triple down, quadruple down, and assume that there is like a mass media initiative, or the third thing, which is finding something out of this reaction that they can clip out of context and continue the Hasan sucks narratives. No matter what happens, though, no matter what happens, I still believe that people have the capacity to change and make up their own minds. I don't know. I kind of agree with the narrative that you suck. Yeah, it's true. I do suck. I'm just not going to stop. I'm a very stubborn person, so obviously I'm not going to stop advocating the things I'm advocating for, regardless of all this shit that's happening, all this background noise that's happening. And a big part of that is obviously because I've been able to create this massive community of like-minded individuals who do care about empathy, who do care about changing people's minds, who do actually go out of their way to protest, to join local organizations, to join community organizations, to join unions. And, that is what makes it all worth it at the end of the day.